one of the experiences that took place for me in this village was a story that a woman told me where one night at 3 o'clock in the morning the village was invaded and all the males from that village were taken to the centre of the village in the village square, and in front of their wives and their children all the males were shot. And literally the following day this entire village had 600 children. There were no males available. And as I'm sitting with this woman imagining, how do people live? How do they survive? How do they eat? There are no breadwinners. And as I left this woman's house, listening to this story, I turned to Yusuf and said, so what can we do? He said, James, that's why we're here. What do you want to do? And the truth is, we always imagine that it's going to be somebody else's responsibility. It's maybe a government's responsibility or a charity's responsibility, but our immediate response is always, it's somebody's problem. And I think the key message that Yusuf said to me, but very eloquently, that it can be our problem. It could also be our problem and our responsibility. And it sort of shook me for a bit, and I took a step back and said, actually, you know, rather than me worrying about what somebody else is going to do, the thought of, actually, what can I do? So I actually said to Yusuf, you know, if I wanted to help, what do you think I can do? He said, basically, currently at the moment, I believe that it will take the international aid agencies up to a year before they can mobilise and get themselves set up, get themselves established to try and address some of the challenges that these people, these communities face. What you can do is, until that aid arrives, until these villages have proper support, is you can probably adopt the entire village, which sounded quite dramatic really. It wasn't quite what I was looking for, but at that moment in time I felt a sense of responsibility and felt a need to do something. And essentially by the time I left my trip, you know, I arrived as really a tourist and left, you know, adopting an entire village of 600 people, and literally sat down with Yusuf and worked out, and what we were trying to focus on was to give the dignity back to these people. This wasn't about blankets or, you know, giving aid. This was about giving them their self-respect and their dignity back. So what I did was actually sat down and calculated how much allowance that each family need on a monthly basis to maintain their life in terms of their food and their clothing, etc. And every month for the next 12 months provided enough allowances to each of the families so that they could live and live with respect and with dignity. And when I look back on my life, once again, I suppose the sense of satisfaction and the sense of being able to do something for somebody else, I think we've all heard the phrase, you know, you get far greater pleasure in giving than you do receiving. And I'm fortunate enough to having lived through the experience and a true testament that there is so much power in that phrase, because certainly for me, I'm absolutely convinced that if you can change the lives of other people, if you can give something back, then actually I think God gives back in bucket loads back to you.